My name is Detective Pierce. I deal in mysteries most men would rather leave buried, and horrors most would rather not name. Some call it obsession, others curse, but I have learned there are places in this world where silence is heavier than truth, and shadows carry memories sharper than steel. It is in such places I am most often found. The letter came on a rain-soaked Tuesday, slid beneath my office door without sound. No signature, only a pressed wax seal bearing the image of an orchard tree, its branches twisted into shapes that looked disturbingly like human limbs. The paper was brittle, as though it had been folded and refolded countless times before reaching me. The ink bled faintly into the fibers, but the words were still legible. Detective Pierce. There is a garden in our town where no birds sing. Its trees are wrought of iron, yet they grow. At night they whisper names. Too many have vanished beneath their branches. We beg you, come to Heroic. See the iron orchard before it takes more of us. It was unsigned, yet something in the trembling script felt desperate, as though the hand that wrote it had not slept in weeks. I might have dismissed it as superstition if not for one detail. Enclosed was a photograph, sepia-toned and badly faded. It showed a cluster of trees, if trees they could be called, rising like blackened skeletons against the pale sky. Their trunks were not bark but iron, and from their branches hung not leaves but chains. The photograph was old, at least 50 years by the look of it. But someone had drawn in fresh ink across the bottom margin. Taken last week. I packed my coat, revolver, and notebook. I knew enough to recognize when something would not leave me alone unless I pursued it. The town of Heroic sat 2 days' train ride north, nestled in a valley where mist clung low to the ground like a permanent fog. Even before I arrived, passengers on the train crossed themselves when I asked about it. Most refused to speak, and those who did muttered the same phrase. Keep away from the orchard. The station was little more than a platform of cracked wood and a single rusting lantern. No one waited to greet me. Only the sound of the wind carried across the barren fields. A signboard read Heroic in peeling paint, though someone had scratched deep gouges through the letters, as if trying to erase the name. I found lodging at a tavern called the Rusted Stag. The keeper, a gaunt man with eyes like sunken coals, glanced at the photograph I showed him and stiffened. You don't want to go there, he rasped, sliding my key across the counter without meeting my gaze. The orchard takes what it wants. No one comes back whole. He would say no more. That night, I sat in my rented room, studying the photograph by lamplight. The trees loomed impossibly tall, their branches bent into crooked patterns. If one squinted, they resembled not chains but figures, arms stretched, fingers curled. I rubbed my eyes and looked again. They were just branches. I told myself that, though unease crawled beneath my skin. Sleep did not come easily. When it did, I dreamt of the orchard. I heard metal creak like a ship's hull under pressure. Faces formed in the shadows between the trunks, mouths opening in silent screams. A wind swept through, carrying the sound of names whispered one after another, names I almost recognized, though they dissolved before I could hold them. I awoke at dawn with the taste of rust in my mouth. The townsfolk of Heroic kept their distance when I asked questions. Farmers turned away, shopkeepers closed shutters, children were pulled off the streets. At last, a woman named Eliza, the tavern's maid, spoke quietly while scrubbing a table. My brother went there, she said, her voice barely a whisper. He was only 16. Thought it was just stories. He came back 3 days later, or something that looked like him did. His skin was pale, and when he opened his mouth, only dust came out. He died before the week was done. We buried him, but every night I hear his voice calling from the orchard. They say the trees drink us, detective. They drink us and grow. Her hands shook so badly she dropped the rag. I pressed for more, but she fled before another word could be said. On the second evening, a knock sounded at my door. A man stood outside, tall and broad-shouldered, his coat heavy with rain. His face was scarred, one eye clouded white. "You're the detective," he said flatly. I nodded. "Name's Corbin. Constable here, what's left of one. If you're set on poking at the orchard, I won't stop you. But you'd best understand, it isn't just iron trees. It's older than this town, older than any of us. Folks vanish there. The ones who don't vanish, change." He handed me a rusted key. "Gate's locked. That'll open it. Don't go at night. And don't touch the branches, no matter what you hear." I asked what he meant, but he turned and left without another word. The orchard lay half a mile beyond Heroic's edge, across fields where the soil was gray and brittle, as though fire had long ago scorched it. A wrought iron fence surrounded the grove, its bars twisted and bent like melted wax. Beyond it, the trees rose. Calling them trees felt wrong. Their trunks were black iron, ridged and pitted, yet shaped unmistakably like wood. Branches spread high into the fog, interwoven until no sky was visible. From those branches hung chains, rusted but intact, clinking faintly in the wind. The air itself tasted metallic. Each breath left my tongue dry, my throat raw. I placed the key into the gate. It groaned as I pushed it open, the sound carrying like a scream across the valley. For a moment I thought I saw movement among the branches, shadows swaying though no wind stirred. I stepped inside. The ground was not earth but a crust of iron shavings, crunching underfoot. Here and there, faint shapes jutted from the soil, half-buried objects, perhaps stones, though some resembled bones. I knelt beside one. It was a jaw, human, its teeth fused into a single metallic mass. From deeper within came a low sound, a groan, as though the entire orchard breathed. Chains rattled though I stood alone. I pressed onward, notebook in hand, recording every detail. The deeper I went, the colder the air became, until each exhale clouded in front of me. Yet no frost formed on the branches. They dripped not with ice, but with condensation thick as blood. At the orchard center I found a tree larger than the rest. Its trunk split into four, each limb fused with what looked unmistakably like human torsos, frozen mid-scream, their arms stretching into branches. At its base lay an offering, a child's toy horse, rusted and broken, placed carefully in the soil. As I reached to examine it, a whisper slid across the back of my neck. "Pierce." I froze. The voice was not Eliza's, nor Corbin's. It was my own. The whisper still clung to my ears, though I stood alone. It had been my voice, no mistake about it, drawled in the same cadence I had heard in my own head 1,000 times. But I had not spoken. I scanned the grove. No figure lurked among the trunks, no footprints marked the iron filings around me. Yet the whisper had been close, impossibly close. The toy horse at the base of the tree seemed to stare back at me. Its rusted wheels were frozen mid-turn, its hollow frame half-eaten by corrosion. Someone had left it here deliberately, a token or sacrifice. I reached out, intending only to lift it, but stopped inches short. The words of Constable Corbin came back with an unpleasant weight. "Don't touch the branches. Don't touch anything." Instead, I crouched lower, studying the soil. A faint depression surrounded the toy, as though small hands had pressed it into the ground. Too small for an adult, too fresh to be older than a week. The earth, if it could be called earth, was disturbed, iron filings scattered outward like ash. I stood quickly, notebook in hand, but the page where I had begun to write was gone. Torn clean from the spine. The wind shifted. Chains rattled high above. When I returned to Heroic, night had already fallen. Lanterns glowed in shuttered windows, but the streets were empty. Even the tavern had grown silent. I passed its windows and glimpsed Eliza within, her head bowed, lips moving as if in prayer. I meant to continue to my room, but a figure blocked the stair. Constable Corbin. His scarred face loomed in the half-light, eye milky and unreadable. "You went," he said. It was not a question. "I did. And?" I told him only fragments: the iron soil, the child's toy, the whisper that had carried my own voice. I omitted the rest. Men like Corbin already lived with enough ghosts of their own. He listened without interruption, then spat into the corner. "Should have left it shut. That orchard's a tomb. Only difference is the dead inside don't stay still." I asked about the toy. His expression darkened. "You're not the first to see one. Folks lose things out there: tools, clothes, toys, even graves. They say the trees take what they please, and what they take, they keep. Sometimes they give it back, but never the same." He leaned closer. "And if it's calling your name now, you best pray it doesn't want more than your words." The next morning, I sought out the townsfolk directly. Doors closed, curtains were drawn, but persistence yields results. An old woman named Marta answered after my third knock. Her hands shook as she poured me bitter tea, though she never met my eyes. "You want the truth?" she whispered. "The orchard grows on bones. That's what my grandmother said. Miners dug the first iron there, found naught or but roots of metal that bled. They tried to burn them, tried to cut them. The orchard grew back stronger. Every year it spreads a little more. And every year someone is taken. Taken how?" She lifted her sleeve. Across her arm ran scars, thin lines that looked as if barbed wire had been pressed into her skin. "My husband," she said. "Dragged in one night. I pulled him free, but the chains cut deep. He never healed. He died with rust in his blood." I asked if she had seen the thing that dragged him. Her eyes finally rose to meet mine, clouded with fear. "It wasn't a thing. It was the trees themselves." I left her house unsettled, and on the street outside found someone waiting, a boy no older than 12, his hair a mess of straw, his eyes sharp and watchful. He said nothing, only pressed a folded scrap of paper into my hand before darting away down an alley. I unfolded it. In uneven handwriting, one word was scrawled: "Midnight." Beneath it, a crude drawing of the orchard's gate. I returned at the appointed hour, though unease churned in my gut. The gate loomed against the moonlight, the trees beyond swaying though no wind stirred. The boy was there, crouched in the shadows. "You're Pierce," he said bluntly. I nodded. "They won't tell you everything. They're scared. But I've been inside. I've seen where it goes." He tugged his sleeve back. His arm was thin, too thin, and along his wrist the skin bore faint metallic sheen, as if iron dust had fused to his flesh. "They tried to take me," he said. "Didn't get all of me. Not yet." I asked his name. "Jonah." Jonah pointed through the bars toward the orchard. "There's something under it. Not just roots. A place. I found the stairs, but I didn't go down. Couldn't. The sound." He shivered violently. "It was like 100 voices all speaking at once, but none of them had tongues." He shoved something else into my hand, a sliver of iron, no bigger than a nail. Its surface was etched with faint grooves, like veins. It pulsed once, faintly, warm against my palm. "They put this in me," Jonah whispered. "But I cut it out before it grew." He backed away before I could question him further, retreating into the shadows with the speed of a cornered animal. I was left alone, the shards still warm in my hand. I slept little that night. When I did, my dreams carried me back into the orchard. I walked among the trees, but this time the chains moved of their own accord, coiling downward like serpents. Each one bore hooks at the end, hooks that clattered together in anticipation. At the orchard's center, the largest tree pulsed like a heart. From its trunk split an opening, an archway of twisted branches leading underground. Beyond it, only darkness, and within that darkness, a sound like ticking gears. I awoke with my ears ringing, and on the nightstand beside me, the iron shard Jonah had given me lay quivering, though no hand touched it. By noon, the entire town buzzed with unease. Whispers followed me wherever I walked. I could feel suspicion, even hostility, though no one dared confront me. Eliza avoided my gaze entirely, and Corbin looked as though he had not slept. When I asked what troubled them, he only growled. "You've stirred it. I can hear it now, even here. The orchard don't like to be watched." That night, screams woke the town. I ran with the rest toward the square, revolver drawn. At its center, a man lay thrashing, his skin mottled with black veins that spread like cracks in stone. Chains snaked from the shadows, wrapping his limbs. Townsfolk shrieked and fled, but I forced myself closer. The chains did not drag him toward the orchard. They dragged him through the ground. His body sank into the earth as though it were water, swallowed whole. His screams cut short as silence rushed in. The chains withdrew, vanishing like smoke. Constable Corbin arrived too late. His face was ashen. "It's begun again," he said. "Every harvest, the orchard takes its due. This time, it's starting early." He turned to me, his ruined eye glinting in the lantern light. "You wanted the truth, Pierce. Then go back. Go down. Find what sleeps under those trees. Because if you don't, none of us will last the season." I've followed blood trails in alleyways, unearthed corpses from shallow graves, and walked into houses where the walls themselves dripped with secrets. But I have never felt the weight of a place the way I felt it that night in Heroic. The iron orchard wasn't just a grove of trees, it was a mouth. And mouths are meant to swallow. Corbin came to my door before dawn, his face hollow with fatigue. He carried no lantern, only his revolver and a rusted hatchet whose handle had been worn smooth by years of use. "It's time," he said. "Time for what?" "For the descent." We didn't go alone. Jonah waited by the orchard gates, pale and shivering, but resolute. His sleeve rolled up just enough for me to see the sheen of iron still faintly embedded in his wrist. "You shouldn't be here," I told him. He shook his head. "I have to. It knows me already. Better I go forward than wait for it to finish what it started." I looked at Corbin, but he said nothing. He simply opened the gate, and together we stepped into the orchard. The trees groaned above us. Chains swayed though the air was still. The soil crunched beneath our boots, iron filings mixed with something darker, something brittle. I didn't look too closely. We reached the central tree before the hour had passed. It towered above the rest, its trunk coiled in links of chain thick as my arm. At its base, the soil had split open into a wound of stone steps spiraling downward into the earth. Jonah pointed, his voice a rasp. "That's where I found it." The steps exhaled a wind of their own, damp and metallic, carrying with it a sound that made my teeth ache. A ticking, constant, uneven, like dozens of clocks wound with broken springs. I lit a lantern. The glow seemed weak against the darkness, but it would have to suffice. And we descended. The staircase seemed endless. The walls were neither stone nor wood, but something in between, fibrous, metallic strands knotted together like roots. They pulsed faintly with warmth. I dared not touch them. The ticking grew louder. I tried to count the rhythm, but it slipped away, cycling between too many beats, too many patterns. Jonah clutched his head and muttered. Corbin gripped his hatchet tighter. At last, the stairs opened into a chamber. It stretched wider than any cavern I'd seen, a cathedral hollowed from the bones of the earth. The ceiling vanished into darkness, but chains hung down in swarms, swaying gently as though stirred by unseen hands. At the chamber's center rose a colossal structure of metal and root intertwined, a tree grown not from soil but from gears and pulleys, its branches stretching upward and outward into the dark. Every movement of those branches made the ticking louder, like the heartbeat of some impossible clock. Jonah staggered forward. "It's growing," he whispered. "It's building itself." I raised the lantern higher. Along the base of the tree, small objects had fused into its roots: toys, tools, bones. Human skulls stared outward, their jaws locked open in silent screams. Corbin cursed under his breath. "This is the orchard's heart. And it's feeding." A sound split the chamber. Not chains this time, not ticking, but laughter. It echoed from everywhere at once, high-pitched and hollow, neither child nor adult. My lantern flickered. Shadows warped across the walls, bending into shapes with too many limbs. Jonah clutched my coat. "It knows we're here." From the far side of the chamber, something began to move. At first, I mistook it for the chains. But no, the figure was too solid, too deliberate. It emerged slowly, dragging itself into the lantern's edge. Its body was human once, perhaps, but had long since been claimed. Flesh had been replaced with plates of iron, ribs visible beneath a cage of rust. Where its face should have been, a broken clock hung, its hands spinning backward with a violent clatter. It lurched forward, chains rattling from its arms like whips. The sound of its steps reverberated through the chamber, each one striking the floor like a hammer on an anvil. Corbin raised his revolver and fired. The shot rang out, sparks flying as the bullet ricocheted off its chest. The thing barely slowed. "Move!" I shouted, pulling Jonah back. The creature's clock face spun wildly. With each turn, the chamber seemed to warp, lantern light dimming, shadows growing longer, steps doubling beneath my feet as though time itself had slipped. We fled deeper into the chamber. Chains lashed down, slicing the earth where we had stood moments before. The air reeked of oil and blood. My lungs burned. At last, we stumbled into a side passage, a tunnel cut through the metallic roots. The ticking lessened there, though faint echoes followed. Jonah leaned against the wall, gasping. "It won't stop. Once it marks you, it doesn't stop." Corbin spat, his hands shaking. "That wasn't no man. That was one of ours. Someone the orchard took and remade." I didn't argue. The truth was clear. The orchard didn't just take. It forged. And what it forged, it used to hunt. The tunnel wound downward. Strange markings lined the walls, symbols etched in rust, spirals and clock faces drawn with nails. They glowed faintly, as though lit from within. Jonah ran his fingers over one and recoiled with a hiss. "It's hot." The symbol pulsed once, and the ticking grew louder again, echoing through the tunnel. Something was following. We reached another chamber, smaller, but no less unsettling. At its center stood an altar of iron plates, welded together with bone. Upon it lay a book bound in what looked disturbingly like skin. Chains looped through the cover, fastening it shut. Corbin swore. "I've seen that before. My father did, when he went down here with the first miners. He said there was a book that told how the orchard grew, how it was fed. They left it. They should have burned it." Jonah reached for it. "We need it." Before I could stop him, he tugged at the chains. They fell loose as though they had been waiting for his touch. The ticking stopped. The silence was worse. In that stillness, I heard breathing, slow, deliberate, coming from behind me. I turned, lantern trembling. From the tunnel's mouth, the clock-faced thing had returned. Its hands no longer spun. They pointed directly at me. And in that silence I understood, it was not bound to the orchard. It was bound to the book. I have faced murderers with blades still warm in their hands. I have walked into basements where the walls whispered. But no case has ever pressed against my bones the way this one does. The iron orchard does not breathe. It does not bleed. And yet, it is alive. The thing with the clock for a face stood at the tunnel's mouth. The lantern trembled in my hand, its flame shrinking, as though the very air recoiled from that creature. Its broken clock hands pointed at me, unmoving. The silence that followed was unbearable, pressing against my ears until I thought my skull might split. Jonah clutched the book to his chest, trembling. "It wants this," he whispered. Corbin raised his revolver again, though I could see his hand shaking. "You drop it, boy. Drop it now." Jonah shook his head, wide-eyed. "No. If we let it go, we'll never know how to stop it. The orchard will keep feeding. It'll keep making more." The chains on the altar rattled though no one touched them. The creature stepped forward. The silence broke with the sudden, terrible sound of the clock hands grinding, ratcheting forward one notch at a time. I grabbed Jonah's shoulder. "Run!" We bolted through another passage, the lantern barely lighting the way. The air grew colder, damper, the metallic roots closing in around us. Behind us, chains scraped stone. Jonah stumbled, clutching the book tight, its cover searing against his arm. I hauled him up by his coat and pushed him forward. Corbin's voice rang out behind us as he fired into the dark. Each shot echoed, but the sound of the chains only grew closer. We burst into another chamber, smaller, low-ceilinged. The floor here was uneven, pitted with holes filled with dark liquid that stank of iron. Corbin slammed the butt of his hatchet against the wall. "We can't keep running. We need to know what's in that damned book." Jonah dropped to his knees, laying it across his lap. The chains that had bound it before now lay in a heap on the floor, twitching faintly like severed serpents. He peeled back the cover. The pages were stiff, brittle, but written in a hand so precise it might as well have been etched with a blade. Symbols filled the margins, circles within circles, gear teeth and spirals, marks that seemed to writhe if I looked too long. Jonah's lips moved silently as his eyes tracked the words. "What does it say?" I demanded. He shook his head. It's not in English. But I can feel it." "Feel it?" He pressed a hand to his chest. "Like it's in me. Like I've known it all along." The ticking returned. Slow, deliberate, echoing from every direction. The creature was near. Jonah turned a page, his hands shaking. He gasped. "It says, the orchard was planted. Not by men. Not by God. By something else. Something that fell long ago." He pointed at an illustration, crudely drawn but unmistakable. A shape descending from the sky, crashing into the earth, its impact sprouting the first iron tree. "The orchard is a machine," Jonah whispered. "But it grows. It uses us to feed itself. Flesh for bark. Bone for roots. Blood for oil." Corbin swore. "I knew it. My old man said the earth down here was wrong. He said it wasn't rock. Said it was waiting." The chains at the chamber's entrance clattered. The clock-faced creature loomed there again, filling the narrow space, its arms scraping the walls as it forced its way through. Sparks flew with each step. Jonah clutched the book tighter. It says there's a way to stop it. To starve it. But what? I barked. He swallowed hard. It needs an offering. A binding of blood and time. A life given to close the orchard's mouth. The creature lurched closer, each movement bending the air, slowing it, stretching it. My lantern's flame elongated, frozen mid-flicker. My heartbeat staggered. Jonah looked at me, terror and resolve mingling in his eyes. It chose me the moment I touched it. That's why it let go of the chains. Corbin shook his head violently. No. Don't you dare, boy. Don't you dare. The chamber shuddered as the iron roots pulsed, reaching inward. The air was thick with the scent of oil, blood, and rust. Jonah rose to his feet, the book in hand. His voice was steady, though tears streamed down his face. I can end this. The creature raised its arms, chains coiling like serpents around it. Its broken clock face turned, and though it had no eyes, I knew it was fixed on him. Corbin aimed his revolver, teeth gritted. Not like this. Jonah opened the book wide, pressing his bleeding palm against the pages. The symbols lit, glowing red. The ticking exploded into a frenzy. The walls convulsed, iron roots thrashing like veins. The floor cracked, spilling dark liquid across our boots. The creature shrieked, not with a voice, but with the grinding of metal, gears tearing themselves apart. Jonah's scream mingled with it, his body outlined in red light, the book fusing to his hand. Jonah! I shouted, lunging forward. Corbin grabbed me, hauling me back. Don't! If you break it now, we all die! The chamber roared, the sound unbearable. The light blazed brighter, searing through my eyelids even when I closed them. And then, silence. When I opened my eyes, the chamber was still. The book lay on the altar once more, its chains wrapped tight around it, glowing faintly. But Jonah was gone. Only the faintest smear of blood remained, soaked into the iron floor. Corbin dropped to his knees, his hatchet clattering from his hands. God forgive us. I stared at the book, its cover pulsing once, as if with a heartbeat. And I knew the orchard had taken Jonah. But whether it was sated, or merely waiting, remained to be seen. I've seen lives taken by greed, revenge, and madness. But what I saw in that underground chamber was none of those things. It was hunger. A hunger not human, not natural, hunger written into the marrow of the earth. Jonah was gone. The book, bound once more in chains, rested on the altar as though it had never left. The air smelled of scorched iron and blood. My lantern sputtered but did not die, though the flame had shrunk to a pitiful thread. Corbin knelt, his broad shoulders sagging as if the weight of the orchard had pressed down on him alone. His hatchet lay at his side, forgotten. He was just a boy, he muttered, voice cracking. My own brother's lad couldn't have been older. I stood silent. Words would not bridge the void Jonah had left, and lies would only deepen it. Instead, I fixed my gaze on the book. It throbbed faintly, a pulse in iron and ink, as if it were breathing. Do you feel it? I asked quietly. Corbin lifted his head, eyes hollow. Feel what? The orchard hasn't ended. He stared at me, disbelief slowly fading into dread. You mean? I nodded. Jonah's sacrifice bound it. But it didn't kill it. Not even close. The ground trembled, subtle at first, then stronger. Dust rained from the low ceiling, scattering across our coats. The roots that lined the walls twitched. For a moment I could swear they grew, stretching further into the chamber, curling toward the altar as if to cradle it. We need to leave, Corbin said hoarsely, forcing himself upright. Before it changes its mind. I almost laughed. Do you think this place has a mind? No, it has a will. And it isn't finished with us. Still, he was right. Staying would mean joining Jonah, and I doubted the orchard would grant me the same mercy. We gathered ourselves and turned back toward the tunnel we had come through. The air there was thicker now, warmer, with the copper stench of blood heavier than before. As we walked, my boots squelched in the iron-stained liquid seeping up from the cracks. The orchard was bleeding, or perhaps feeding. The tunnels shifted as we moved. Where once had been a straight path now twisted in upon itself. Every chamber felt subtly altered, walls closer, ceilings lower, roots thicker. At times I swore I could hear Jonah's voice. Not words, just fragments of breath, caught between gears grinding in the dark. "Don't stop," Corbin muttered, pushing forward. We came upon another chamber. Smaller, more intimate, the roots here weaved into something like a throne. Upon it sat a body. At first, I thought it was Jonah. But no, the frame was older, dressed in clothes rotted decades past. A miner's uniform, crusted with rust and blood. Chains crisscrossed his chest, piercing the ribs, holding him upright. His skull was tilted back, jaw agape, as though he'd died mid-scream. Corbin swore and averted his eyes. "I know him," he muttered. "Or at least I knew the stories. They said old Royce was the first who went missing down here. Thought he'd fallen in a shaft." I stepped closer. The chains that pinned Royce rattled faintly, though no draft stirred. His skull jerked, once. Just a twitch. Enough to make my hand go cold on the lantern's handle. The empty sockets seemed to lock on me. And then a sound filled the chamber, ticking. Not steady. Broken. Like a clock long unwound, gears slipping against teeth. The corpse moved. Its hands jerked up, clutching the chains across its chest. The jaw opened wider, impossibly wide, and a voice spilled out, not his voice. Jonah's. "Detective." My blood ran ice. Corbin stumbled back, face pale. "That ain't him. That can't be him." The corpse strained against the chains, the sound of bones cracking echoing through the chamber. Its ribs split further as iron roots writhed beneath the skin, twisting upward. Jonah's voice came again, warped by the dead man's throat. "You left me." I tightened my grip on the lantern, though its flame faltered. "You chose," I whispered. "You made the choice." The corpse laughed, or tried to. The sound was jagged, wet. "The orchard doesn't take choices. It takes time. And it took mine." The chains snapped, one by one, like gunshots in the silence. The thing that had been Royce collapsed forward, crawling toward us on splintered bones. Its arms stretched longer with each movement, iron bursting through the marrow like branches sprouting from rotten wood. Corbin raised his revolver, firing twice. Both bullets struck, tearing fragments of skull and rib. The creature did not slow. I swung the lantern, smashing it against its face. Oil splattered, flame catching for the briefest instant. The smell of burning rust filled the air before the fire sputtered out, smothered by the thing's oozing oil blood. It shrieked, not with Jonah's voice this time, but with the metallic scream of twisting gears. "Run!" I barked. We fled deeper into the tunnels, the sound of splintering chains and scraping iron in pursuit. My lungs burned, my legs threatened collapse, but fear carried me forward. At last, we stumbled into another vast chamber. Here, dozens of bodies hung suspended from the ceiling, wrapped in chains like puppets. Miners, villagers, strangers, all twisted into grotesque marionettes of iron and bone. Their heads turned as one, eyes hollow, jaws opening in silence. Then, together, they began to tick. The sound was overwhelming, 1,000 clocks out of sync, grinding and stuttering. Corbin dropped to his knees, clutching his ears. "Make it stop!" he roared. But it wouldn't stop. The ticking was inside me, inside my skull, rattling my teeth, shaking the breath from my lungs. I staggered forward, staring at the chained corpses. Among them, I saw Jonah again, his face pale, eyes gone, chains wrapped around his limbs. His lips moved. And though no sound came, I knew what he said. "Your time." The ground split beneath us. Iron roots surged upward, wrapping the chamber like ribs closing around a heart. Corbin screamed as one root lashed his leg, dragging him down. He hacked at it with his hatchet, sparks flying, but more came, dozens, hundreds, writhing like serpents. I grabbed his arm, pulling with all I had. "Don't let go!" But in that moment I knew. The orchard was not offering us escape. It was demanding payment. Jonah had not been enough. The orchard wanted more. I once believed that fear was an emotion, fleeting as breath. But here, inside the orchard, fear was not emotion. It was law. A rhythm. A currency traded in heartbeats. Corbin's scream tore through the chamber, ragged and desperate. Iron roots had ensnared his leg, tightening like a serpent. Blood spread across his trousers as barbs pierced his skin. He hacked at them with his hatchet, each blow ringing like steel on steel, sparks dancing. "Hold on!" I shouted, gripping his arm. The roots pulled harder, dragging him across the floor. My boots skidded in a thick slurry of rust and blood. Corbin's face was white with agony, sweat pouring down his brow. "It won't cut!" I swung the lantern wildly, smashing its dim light against the roots. The flames sputtered and flared, oil splashing. For an instant the roots recoiled, writhing as though burned. Corbin tore his leg free, staggering into my arms. But victory was hollow. The chamber groaned. The corpses above us ticked louder, jaws clattering like gears grinding in rust. The iron roots retracted, but only to coil along the walls, quivering in anticipation. We stood, gasping. Corbin's leg was shredded, his boots soaked crimson. He leaned heavy against me, teeth clenched. We need to keep moving," he rasped. "Before it tries again." I nodded, though I knew we had not escaped. We had only been spared, for now. We limped down another corridor. The roots formed archways, pulsing faintly as though veins pumping lifeblood. The deeper we went, the stronger the stench of rust and decay. At times I swore the tunnels were breathing, walls shifting in and out like lungs. We came to another chamber. This one was vast, cathedral-like, its ceiling lost in shadows. The floor was a mosaic of broken clock faces, each hand frozen at a different time. Some ticked faintly, others cracked under our boots with brittle snaps. And at the center stood a pit. It yawned wide, lined with jagged roots that curved inward like teeth. From within came a sound, low, steady, rhythmic. Not ticking. Not chains. A heartbeat. Corbin swallowed, voice hoarse. "Christ Almighty! That's its heart!" I said nothing, for I knew he was right. The air around the pit shimmered. From its depths rose not smoke, but faces, ghostly, flickering. Dozens. Hundreds. Men and women, their mouths open in silent screams. The lost miners. The missing villagers. Jonah. The vision swirled above us like a storm, then bent downward as though pulled by gravity. They sank back into the pit, vanishing into the maw. The orchard did not kill. It consumed. Corbin gripped my coat. "We can't fight that. Nothing human could." "Maybe not," I said. My eyes fell on the book chained to my side, the same cursed ledger Jonah had bound. "But it's not invincible. It was chained once. It can be chained again. Corbin spat blood into the dirt. At what price? We've already lost the boy. The heartbeat grew louder, shaking dust from the ceiling. The pit's roots flexed, reaching outward like fingers. I stared into that abyss and felt it stare back. It knew us. Counted our breaths like coins. We were not prey. We were currency. We can't both leave, I whispered. Corbin's eyes hardened. Don't you damn say it. I ain't Jonah. Neither am I. Silence stretched between us, heavy and final. Somewhere deep in the orchard, a chain snapped, ringing like a funeral bell. The corpses suspended in the last chamber wailed, their ticking shifting into a single, synchronized beat. The orchard's heart quickened. From the pit, something emerged. Not roots. Not corpses. Something greater. It rose like a tide, a form woven of iron and shadow. Dozens of faces melded into its surface. Its limbs were roots sharpened into claws, its eyes empty clock faces that spun without hands. The maw of the orchard. Corbin stumbled back, hatchet shaking in his grasp. Oh God! Save your breath, I said, my own voice shaking. You'll need it to scream. The maw struck. Roots whipped across the chamber, shattering clock faces, smashing stone. I dragged Corbin aside as a lash carved a trench where we'd stood. We fought, not to win, but to survive. Corbin's hatchet hacked iron splinters free, each strike answered with a shriek of twisting metal. I swung the broken lantern, spraying what oil remained, setting sparks that briefly scorched the roots before being smothered. But the maw was endless. Its heart thundered from the pit, every beat shaking my bones. And then, Jonah's voice again, rising from within the creature. Pierce. The sound froze me. It was not rage, not blame, just pleading. Pierce, let it take you. Corbin roared, swinging wildly. Don't listen. It's not him. But deep down, I knew part of Jonah lingered. Perhaps not alive, but echoing within the orchard's hunger. The maw loomed, shadow and iron blotting the chamber. Its face bent close, no longer Jonah's, no longer Royce's, but mine. My own hollow face stared back at me, lips moving silently. It was telling me what it already knew. I would join it. I fumbled for the book, tearing it from my coat. The chains binding it rattled, glowing faintly red as though awakening. The maw recoiled, shrieking. The book burned in my hands. Words crawled across the cover, rewriting themselves. A command. A cost. Detective. Corbin's voice was low, grim. He knew what it meant. The book demanded blood. A vessel. A life to chain the orchard again. And there were only two left. There are moments when time does not flow forward. It circles, choking, binding you to choices you cannot undo. The orchard lived within such circles. Now so did I. The book pulsed in my grip, its chains rattling like manacles struck by unseen hammers. My palms blistered from its heat, but I could not drop it. The pages inside flickered as though alive, words scratching themselves across yellowed paper, shifting and reforming. Corbin limped toward me, sweat streaking his soot-blackened face. The wound in his leg bled steadily, soaking his boot. He pointed at the book with his hatchet. What's it want? His voice was hollow, though he already knew. I didn't answer. Because the book answered for me. The pages snapped open, fluttering as though in a gale. A single line etched itself in rust-colored ink across both sides. A life for a chain. A vessel for a lock. I felt bile rise in my throat. I had seen this before in old cult journals, inscriptions carved on mine walls, half-erased prayers written in blood. But never this clear. Never this absolute. The orchard's heart thundered beneath us, The maw loomed from the pit, its shifting faces sneering. It smelled of rot, of iron, of inevitability. Corbin's eyes met mine. He saw my hesitation, and in his look was both fury and resignation. "It ain't gonna take me alive," he spat. "Don't even think it." The maw moved closer, its shadow swallowing us whole. The dozens of faces along its surface rippled, some wailing silently, others grinning with mockery. And then one face pushed forward, clearer than the rest. Jonah. His mouth opened. This time, sound came. A whisper. "Pierce. Choose. Or we both stay." Corbin recoiled. "That ain't him. It's a trick." But was it? Or was Jonah nothing but a voice woven into the orchard now, neither living nor dead, speaking because the maw wanted me to hear? The chambers shook violently. Roots slashed from the pit, cracking stone. Dust rained from the ceiling. The heartbeat grew faster, erratic, as though sensing its own near freedom. The book's chains writhed, wrapping my wrists like serpents. The words shifted again, demanding, insistent. "Chain it. Blood binds." I clutched my head, pain stabbing behind my eyes. The air reeked of hot metal. Corbin staggered close, gripping my coat. His voice was raw. "Pierce. Look at me. If one of us stays, it'll be me." I froze. Corbin's expression was unreadable, carved from stone and exhaustion. But behind the grit I saw it, truth. Not heroism, not sacrifice, but inevitability. He had no illusions left. He knew his leg was ruined, that he wouldn't walk out of this place even if we found a way. Still, hearing it aloud, it hollowed me. "No," I said, voice low. "I'm the detective. This is my burden. My case." His cracked laugh echoed bitterly. "Your case? Hell, Pierce, this ain't no case. This is a grave. You just ain't layin' in it yet." The maw leaned forward, eyes spinning clock faces. Its many mouths opened at once, voices overlapping. "Yes. One stays. One leaves. Decide. Decide. Decide." The sound was unbearable, as if hundreds of gears shrieked at once. I pressed the book to my chest, trying to drown it out. But the choice pressed back harder. Corbin shoved me suddenly, hard enough that I staggered toward the pit's edge. My boots slipped on broken clock glass. I almost fell into the abyss before catching myself. He stood wobbling, hatchet still in hand. His eyes blazed. "You're getting out, Pierce. You'll drag the story out with you. Someone's gotta know. Someone's gotta warn the world what's buried here." "Corbin." "No." His voice cracked. "No more words. Just do it. Use the damn book." The maw loomed higher, arms of roots stretching, its laughter a chorus of chains snapping. I held the book, trembling. My lips formed words I did not know, drawn out of me like smoke, ancient syllables burned into my throat. The chains glowed red-hot, then white, then blinding. Corbin dropped his hatchet, raised both arms wide, and bellowed into the shadows. "Come and take me, you iron bastard!" The roots struck. They wrapped him instantly, piercing flesh, dragging him toward the pit. His scream was raw, but it was not fear. It was defiance. The book ignited in my hands. Chains unspooled from it, writhing through the air like serpents of fire. They wrapped around the maw, around the pit, around Corbin himself. The heartbeat faltered. The orchard shrieked. Corbin's eyes locked with mine as the chains sank into his skin, fusing him to the roots. His face twisted, not from pain but from grim acceptance. "Tell them." His voice was already fading, muffled by the iron swallowing him. "Tell them it don't end here. and then he was gone. The chamber shook violently, a sound like 1,000 locks slamming shut echoing through the orchard. The moth thrashed, its many faces shrieking, before the chains cinched tight and dragged it back into the pit. Darkness consumed everything. When I awoke, the book was cold and silent in my lap. Its chains no longer writhed, they hung limp, inert. The heartbeat was gone. Only silence remained. But the pit was not empty. Deep below, I could still hear ticking. Faint. Patient. Waiting. The orchard was chained again. But not destroyed. Never destroyed. And Corbin was part of it now. I thought chains and silence might grant me peace. But silence in the orchard is never empty. It remembers. It repeats. I don't know how long I lay unconscious at the edge of that pit. My head throbbed as if filled with iron dust, my chest still raw from shouting words no human tongue should know. When I finally forced myself upright, the chamber looked still. The roots were shriveled, like black veins drained of blood. The maw was gone, swallowed by the pit and locked behind its new chains. Only Corbin's hatchet remained, half buried in soot and shards of glass. I reached for it, my hand trembling. The handle was still warm. The tunnel back up was a ruin of stone and broken gears. I climbed in silence, though silence in the orchard has weight. My boots scraped rust and grit, every sound swallowed quickly as though the mind itself wished to forget. By the time I emerged into night air, the moon had already risen high, bloated and red. I gasped, choking on the cold. For a moment, I thought I had escaped. Then I heard it. A ticking. Not from the book, not from a watch, not even from my mind. But from the trees themselves. The orchard above the mine had changed. Where once the twisted trees had loomed silently, now each branch quivered with faint rhythm. The trunks gleamed with thin veins of iron, pulsing faintly with red light like embers. When the wind blew, the branches did not rustle. They clinked, like chains striking one another. I staggered forward, the hatchet in one hand, the chained book in the other. The air itself seemed heavier, pressing against my lungs. The earth remembered Corbin. It remembered his bargain. And now it wanted me to remember too. I passed the first row of trees. Their bark peeled back as though breathing, and beneath, I saw shapes. Faces. Shadows embedded in the wood, their eyes closed, lips moving silently. I tried not to listen. I tried not to look. But when I did, I saw Corbin's features pressed faintly in one trunk, mouth twisted as though screaming inside bark. I stumbled back. "No," I whispered. "No, damn you. You can't." The face didn't move. But in my mind I heard him. Clear as day. "Pierce. It don't end here." The village was worse. By the time I reached its crumbling streets, the buildings seemed taller, their roofs bent at unnatural angles, timbers groaning like clock hands forced into place. The church bell tower ticked steadily, though no bells swung inside. Windows glowed with faint, red light, as though lanterns burned behind curtains of flesh. No one greeted me. No one moved. But shadows leaned against doorframes and sat at tables inside. Pale silhouettes, frozen in positions of daily life, eating, reading, praying. All still. All silent. Every few seconds their heads twitched. In unison. To the rhythm of the orchard's new heart. I tried knocking on one door. My knuckles struck wood, but the echo was metallic, as if the house were hollow iron. The shadow inside didn't stir. It only turned its head slowly toward me. Its face pressed to the window. It had no mouth. Only a single, enormous clock hand, piercing where its mouth should be. Ticking. I backed away. My breath fogged in the cold. The shadow didn't follow. But the ticking grew louder, spreading from house to house. Like a contagion. I ran. The street twisted beneath me, elongating. Each corner I turned brought me back to the same square. The fountain in its center had transformed, its waters gone, replaced by black oil bubbling from cracks. Clock cogs floated in the tar, spinning without touching one another. Above, the moon seemed closer, almost brushing rooftops. I realized then, the sky itself was bending toward the orchard, as though pulled down by invisible chains. I clutched the book tighter. Its chains twitched faintly, cold against my skin. "You chained it," I hissed through clenched teeth. "Why isn't it done?" The book did not answer. But the air did. Because it remembers. My boots dragged me back toward the mine entrance, though I didn't choose the direction. It was as if the ground itself tilted, pulling me. There, at the gaping maw of the shaft, I saw movement. A figure stood, framed by red moonlight. Tall. Thin. Wearing a mask of broken clock faces. Its arms hung wrong, each joint bending backward, gears jetting through its skin. But its posture was unmistakable. "Corbin." I fell to my knees. "God, no. No." The figure tilted its head. The masked hand spun wildly, then stopped, pointing at me. And though the mouth beneath was hidden, the voice was his. "Pierce. The orchard remembers. And it wants you next?" The book rattled violently in my grip. The chains surged, wrapping tighter, as though to keep me from dropping it. Corbin, or the thing wearing him, stepped closer, each stride echoing like the toll of a great clock. Behind him, more shapes emerged from the orchard's edge. All familiar. All impossible. Jonah among them. Miners I had seen listed only in death records. Faces from a town that no longer belonged to the living. Every one of them marked with gears, cogs, and clockwork carved into their flesh. The orchard remembered. And it had chosen to show me. In the orchard, time does not pass. It folds. It cracks. It repeats until the repetition breaks you. I thought I could still count the hours. I was wrong. Corbin, or what was left of him, stood at the shaft's mouth, mask glinting with fractured clock faces. The orchard's glow bent around him, as if even moonlight obeyed his broken rhythm. Behind him, the shapes of miners, villagers, and strangers alike drifted closer. All hollow. All marked. I took one step back, clutching the chained book. The earth groaned beneath my boots, as though it didn't approve. Corbin tilted his head. The masked hands spun violently, faster and faster, until they froze at 13. The air shuddered. There is no 13th hour. And yet it rang. A single toll, low and metallic, reverberated across the orchard. The trees shook, chains rattling. Windows shattered, spilling shadows like ink. The ground tilted, pulling me toward him. I tried to run. I swear I did. But every direction bent back toward the shaft. Every street stretched thin like melted wax. I could run left, right, forward. It didn't matter. The clock-face mask was always waiting. The villagers' shadows joined him, their bodies twitching in broken rhythm. Some had arms of gears, others had mouths fused shut with iron plates, but all moved in unison, heads jerking on invisible strings. One step too close. Its eye socket gaped hollow. From within, something ticked softly, a pendulum swinging. I struck it with the hatchet. The head split like rotted wood, revealing not bone, but a nest of cogs that spilled out, still moving. The body staggered but didn't fall. The others laughed, or at least, I think it was laughter. It sounded like gears slipping, like teeth grinding. The toll rang again. 13. And with it, the village broke. Buildings twisted upward, stretching into jagged towers of rust and timber. Streets spiraled like clock springs. The fountain split into a dozen pieces, each chunk orbiting slowly as though time itself had forgotten gravity. I fell to my knees, covering my ears. The sound wasn't just heard, it was inside me, grinding against my skull. When I opened my eyes, Corbin stood only a few feet away. "Pierce," he said, though his voice was no longer his. It was hundreds of voices, layered, overlapping, out of sync. "You chained them all, but chains rust. The orchard doesn't forgive. It collects." I raised the book. Its chains rattled, straining as if alive. The lock pulsed faintly with blue light, as if it understood. "Stay back," I growled. My own voice cracked. Corbin's figure twitched, body bending backward with sickening pops. His arms extended unnaturally, bones stretching, fingers curling into long hooks of metal. The mask clicked as the hand spun again. "Time was broken long before you came. You only tore the wound wider." The shadows advanced. I swung the hatchet, hacking through them. Each strike scattered fragments of gears and glass, but for every one I felled, two more stepped forward. Their faces leaned close, whispering in voices I knew, my mother's, my colleagues', even my own. "Pierce, stay. Pierce, it's already too late. Pierce, you were always meant to join us." The toll rang a third time. And then the sky itself cracked. The red moon split in two, and from the fissures spilled chains of light, descending like roots into the orchard. They sank into trees, into houses, into flesh. Everything they touched froze in place, suspended like puppets on strings. Including me. My arms locked. My legs refused to move. The book trembled violently in my grip, the chains pulling tight around my wrists. My heart pounded against ribs that suddenly felt like clockwork. Corbin stepped closer. His mask leaned inches from mine, its cracked glass reflecting my own horrified face. 13 was never meant to be struck," he whispered. "But now it tolls for you." Something inside me rebelled. Not courage. Not faith. Just rage at the inevitability. I forced my hand upward, every tendon screaming, and slammed the chained book against his mask. The impact shattered the glass. Splinters rained down, slicing my skin. Behind the mask, there was no face, only a hollow cavity, filled with spinning gears that shrieked as they tore themselves apart. The shadows screamed in unison. The 13th toll echoed again, louder, shaking the ground until buildings collapsed in showers of dust and chains. And in that chaos, the book flew open. Pages tore free, spilling upward into the red-lit sky. Each page bore names, etched in glowing script. Names of villagers. Names of miners. Names of strangers. And then, at the center, one name burned brighter than the rest. Pierce. The letters bled across the parchment, dripping into the air like molten iron. I tried to close the book. I tried to scream. But the pages kept turning, faster, faster, until the sound of their fluttering was louder than the tolling bells. The chains shattered. And then the world fell silent. I have walked through broken hours, twisted streets, and orchards of iron. I have seen the hunger of shadows, the laughter of hollowed faces, and the tolling of a 13th hour that should never exist. But nothing prepared me for what awaited in the roots of the orchard itself. The world had shattered. The red moon bled across the sky, casting every twisted branch, every shattered window, and every corpse-bound gear into sharp relief. The ground beneath me cracked, revealing black veins crawling like iron roots through the soil. Each pulse resonated with a sound I could feel in my teeth, in my bones, the orchard's heart. Corbin's mask lay broken at my feet. The shards reflected the chaos, the frozen villagers, the twisted houses, the ascending corpses. But Corbin himself. I could feel him. The orchard had absorbed him into its root. I could hear him whispering through the veins of iron. The orchard collects. It always collects. Rivera and Hodge were still with me, though their eyes were wide with disbelief. Rivera trembled as he clutched the lantern. Hodge's pistol had long since ceased to matter. Neither dared speak. I clenched the chained book. Its pages, now fluttering uncontrollably, demanded attention. The names, the vessels, the markers, they were all here, etching a rhythm into the orchard that was older than humanity. Listen, I whispered. This is the source. If we destroy it, maybe we stop it. The roots pulsed, responding. Not like a tree, not like wood. More like a living thing aware of my intentions. They twisted upward, forming colossal, rust-colored tendrils, each adorned with gears, broken glass, and stitched human faces. The orchard was a body, and now it had found its spine. Hodge swallowed hard. We can't fight this. I shook my head. We don't fight. We bind. We seal. Or we die trying. Rivera whimpered. And if we fail? Then the world beyond this orchard dies with it. I opened the book wide, scanning the pages for guidance. Amid the swirling, glowing script, one notation leapt out. The last root. Sever the core, and the orchard will collapse upon itself. The orchard responded instantly. The ground trembled, and the tendrils writhed as if aware of the threat. One of the iron roots, thick as a house column, whipped toward us. I leapt aside, swinging the book like a weapon. Sparks flew as the metal scraped against the cover, but the book held. Hodge fired twice. The root recoiled slightly but didn't stop. Rivera cried, "Pierce, you'll get us killed!" I didn't answer. I could feel the rhythm of the orchard through the soles of my boots, through the air. Every pulse, every toll, every whisper, they all pointed upward, toward a massive root, the core from which all others radiated. There. The heart. The climb was treacherous. The roots formed a spiral staircase, each step living, contracting beneath my feet. The closer I got, the more I felt the hunger, tendrils reaching, voices chanting, gears spinning, shadows crawling along the surfaces like oil. I could hear them, villagers, miners, faces I knew, corroded with time, whispering in unison. Pierce, the vessel, the vessel. I ignored them. Focus. One step at a time. Hodge followed, gun useless, simply watching my lead. Rivera tripped twice but caught himself. His hands shook, lantern flickering like a frightened heart. At last I reached the core. A massive knot of roots, thicker than 100 men could wrap around, spun in a circle. At its center, a hollow cavity opened, glowing with an eerie pale blue light. The air hummed with the orchard's voice, layered over itself, 1,000 whispers merged into one. The vessel is broken. The orchard feeds. The vessel returns. I understood then. The black stone, the chained book, the torn pages, they were keys, not weapons. And now, only one thing remained. I raised the book over my head. I spoke the words written in the final page, words that pulsed with ancient authority, languages I didn't know yet somehow understood. Bind and sever. Close the cycle. End the hunger. The core pulsed violently. The tendrils screeched, some snapping, others recoiling. Shadows leapt toward us, reaching, clawing, but the book radiated a wave of force, pushing them back. Rivera screamed, and Hodge grabbed him, pulling him behind a root. The orchard roared, a sound like grinding metal, splintering wood, and breaking bones. I touched the hollow cavity. The black stone I had thought destroyed flared in my palm. I pressed it against the root's heart. The energy that surged into me was unlike anything: pain, hunger, cold, and fire all at once. Chains burst, not around the stone, but through the root itself. Cracks formed in the iron, spreading outward, spiderweb patterns of rust and light. The root shrieked, then cracked. The orchard's body shuddered. Trees twisted, branches broke, buildings splintered. Shadows screamed, peeling from walls and bodies. Names from the book swirled around me, glowing bright. I recognized some, those we had tried to save, those we couldn't. I whispered a promise. "Not today!" The black stone pulsed one last time. The book's pages flared, then shredded themselves in the air, collapsing into dust. I stumbled back. The core twisted violently, then imploded inward. The root shrank, shriveled, and finally collapsed into itself. A silence so deep followed that I could hear my own heartbeat. The orchard's voice was gone. The red moon splintered and dimmed. The villagers, hollowed, twisted, fell lifelessly to the ground, their bodies crumpling like broken puppets. The chains of gears clattered to stillness. I fell to my knees, exhausted, bloodied, and shaking. Hodge and Rivera joined me. Neither spoke. None of us moved. We simply stared at the remains of the orchard, a charred, twisted ruin of iron, wood, and shadow. The wind whispered through broken windows. The moon returned to normal. Time began its slow crawl forward. I knew it would not last. The orchard's hunger was ancient. But for now, the cycle had ended. For now, the last root was severed. I stood. I looked at Hodge. "We go. We leave this place. And we never speak of it." Rivera nodded silently, still trembling. I glanced back once toward the shattered core. The shadows seemed to lean, watching me. Perhaps waiting. Perhaps remembering. Perhaps already plotting their next collection. I whispered to myself, "Not today! Not yet!" And we walked away. The iron orchard had fallen. But the hunger, oh, the hunger, was patient.